Due to some foreseeable expenses that were well within my control, I am broke. And this is a real problem because the Elden Ring DLC came out not that long ago. I still don't have it, but I desperately want it because it looks pretty awesome. I, however, have gone back to Ashen recently, and I've been doing a cooperative playthrough on this, which has been a lot of fun, and I realized how much I liked the game. So when the creator of Ashen released a new game called Flintlock, The Siege of Dawn, I was excited to try it out. From the game's Steam page, it says, from Game Studio A44, makers of Ashen, comes an explosive Souls-light where gods and guns collide in a battle for the future of humanity. That is a pretty badass sounding introduction. I figured it was worth a try. However, when this game released, the crowd went absolutely mild. This game peaked at like 600 active players when it was released. With that in mind, I wanted to see if I enjoyed the game or not. I decided I would buy it, I would play it for the 2 hours that the Steam refund system allows, and if I didn't like it, I would refund it and I would get the Elden Ring DLC instead. Let's go ahead and hop into my 2 hours and see how they went. It should go without saying, this is obviously going to include spoilers for the first roughly 2 hours worth of the game. If you don't want to see spoilers or if you care about the story, it is going to be something you want to skip. One of the first things I noticed about this game is that it is incredibly shaky in terms of the voice acting quality. You're going to have certain voice actors that are doing a fantastic job, and you're going to have others that are doing a very questionable job.
Sapperun, clear the way! No rest till dawn!
No rest till dawn!
For my video, I've also opted to go with no added music in the background apart from what you'll hear in the game. The reason I did this was strictly a creative critique on the part of the game. I noticed that a lot of dialogues are very lackluster because there is no background sound, essentially. A lot of the combat scenes can be a bit awkward, and a lot of the cutscenes can be a bit awkward as well because there's simply no combat music. There's not really too much going on in the background for sound, so most of the time it's essentially narration from somebody who sounds like they have a microphone in their mouth, and there's just awkward shuffling or armor sounds in the background on top of that. This game definitely doesn't really have a notable soundtrack, or really a soundtrack at all that I could detect. The next notable thing to talk about is going to be the performance in the game. My God, the performance is something else. Let's hop to a live reaction during the footage and see what I had to say. I'm getting 38 FPS right now, by the way. During my entire play session, my FPS did not go above 45 frames. The highest I ever got was while browsing menus, which stuck me at around 38 FPS solid. This is within the first week of the game being launched, so that could be subject to change. However, I would also argue that we need to stop accepting technical issues from games upon launch. This was released as a full-priced $55 game in Canada for the base edition, and $59 for the deluxe edition. With a game of that price point, I expect to launch it and I expect it to work. My technical specifications on my computer are certainly not to blame either. I can run almost every other game without issue. The only time I run into problems is when I'm trying to record obscenely high quality video footage at the same time as this game. I tried running it with and without my recording software, and that made no difference. So it seems like it's horribly optimized, or it just doesn't have really any infrastructure in place to try and get a better frame rate out of certain pieces of hardware. But alas, even with these issues present, we pushed forward and we got a fantastically done, very choppy, very low quality cutscene with what appeared to be some sort of like a demonic griffin looking type thing. I'm not sure what to call it exactly. However, inside the cutscene, we seen that there was a bunch of AI people there that were ready to fight with us and take this thing on. I then got placed into the fight and I seen them leading a charge towards it with like 2 or 3 people, and then poof, it was me alone in the fight, and then I get defeated, and then poof, we're back in the cutscene with all the other people, which was super jarring. And even in the moment, I was just kind of thinking to myself, what the hell is going on? Where did the budget go? We're in the first 20 minutes of the game here, people.
All set.
Everyone get clear! souls below.
Hey! Hey, Harlan! You still with me?
Yes! That thing is...
Snap out of it, Harlan!
No rest till dawn!
Till
No
dawn!
rest till
No
dawn!
rest till dawn! All right, you mongrel. Come at me!
We were then treated to a sequence that I'm sure the writers were wiggling their toes with glee as they wrote this one, where our main protagonist gives this little speech where she says, "Oh, the gods are so bad. The gods killed everyone in my life. I would never help the gods." And then roughly 30 seconds later in the dialogue, she's like, "Yeah, you know what? I'll help the gods. It can't be that bad, right?"
Your kind ravaged my city, my world, killed everyone I've ever loved. Every breath I take from here on will be spent exacting my revenge on the gods.
As long as Uru is free, your world is in mortal peril. Help me seal him away. Stem the tide of destruction. It's the least you can do.
You have a deal. Any hint of trickery and I'll be burying this axe into your skull.
I would expect nothing less.
Now, keep in mind that up to this point, the game has been pretty terrible from the voice acting to the cinematics to the overall gameplay feel, so they started introducing some very cool movement mechanics like you see in the background, and these felt pretty good, so it's super disappointing that we have a solid movement system like this, and there is more movement mechanics coming up in the future as well, but it's so disappointing to see this system in a game that just executes everything else so poorly. So even the movement is left feeling pretty terrible. As for the other movement mechanics I was talking about, there is rift traveling in this game, which is essentially just teleporting between preset points on the map, as you can see here in the background. So you're basically just teleporting between the two rifts. And from what I could tell inside the game, there didn't seem to be a way for the player to create these rifts to set up their own kind of like quick travel around the map system. There didn't seem to be any sort of items or anything like that that allowed you to place these down and basically set up your own like travel networks or anything like that, bypassing enemies. Nothing cool like that, really. And I mean, it might happen later in the game, but at the end of the day, I'm testing the game for the first 2 hours until I decide whether or not I want to refund it. So the game has to find a way to hook me within those 2 hours. Otherwise, it's bye-bye, sayonara, see you next time. I went through a trial of combat fighting probably about 5 enemies in total, a couple of which were kind of tough and I died a couple times. At the end of that, my reward was a new axe, so I decided that I would put this new shiny axe, which is clearly made to destroy items. I'd put it to the test and I would destroy some of the crates in my vicinity to see if they contained any loot. To my disappointment, the chests not only did not contain any loot, but they also could not be destroyed. They did not add destructible environments to a $50 full price released game that just came out in 2024. As an avid outdoorsman with an interest in firearms, I tend to get a little hard when I hear the word musket. So we were introduced to the new musket, which is kind of a replacement or an adjacent to the pistol that you have. Essentially, the musket is being touted as a higher damage weapon that you can use to start off some combat engagements. Little did I know that this would actually transform the game into the next Sniper Elite installation when you actually land a headshot on your opponents, which is something I did not expect. Fuck. I haven't done a whole lot so far to show off the combat in this game or how this all ties together when you bring in, you know, your axes and your firearms and your muskets and all that sort of good stuff. We got to the first boss inside the game, the first main boss, at least I would say. The rest were just kind of, you know, rubbish that you're supposed to defeat without issue. I will go ahead and show you the entire fight so you can see how it plays out, although I'm going to do everybody watching this a very solid favor, and I'm going to play through it at 2x speed so you don't have to sit here and watch the same boring, mundane moves after the same boring, mundane moves. After spending entirely too much of my time fighting this extremely thrilling and invigorating boss, we unlocked the local Starbucks where you can actually go and get some armor changes and all those sorts of good things. And I was extremely disappointed and extremely happy in some instances to see that the armors that we could unlock were functionally no different than our current outfits. They simply just offered a difference of appearance. There was no additional protections that it mentioned. There was no additional item slots that they offered, no additional movement speeds or penalties, just simply different colors of the same outfit we were currently wearing. Rest assured, though, there was at least 6 different colors you could choose from, which is what is important at the end of the day. We want to be able to customize ourselves to look cool in our own respective visions, as opposed to actually getting anything beneficial out of these armor sets, of course. While adventuring in this wonderfully crafted, not open world fantasy game, I came across a blast grenade, which seemed like a pretty cool new tool for my arsenal, so I immediately put it to good use against the local denizens. Overall, it was very disappointing to see this game tout itself as a Souls-Lite, which it still does actually advertise itself as on the Steam page. In my particular opinion, what makes the Souls games great, or Souls-like or Souls-Lite games great, is that they generally have very challenging, very player-driven combat, combined with a story that is ever-present, but still very enjoyable if you do choose to dig into it. Unfortunately, this game has neither of those things. Combat essentially comes down to mashing the same couple of moves that you find that works. Particular players are going to have different movesets that suit their style a little bit better. You're basically just hammering your head against button 1, button 1, button 1, oh, button 2, button 1, button 1, and that is what your gameplay is going to be. At the end of the day, it's not that engaging, and the story, it is present, but it's definitely not good. So you might be wondering, what did I rate this game? Well, I refunded it, and I went and bought the Elden Ring DLC instead.
Blood must spill. Blood of your fellows. They are three faithful.
They were never saints. They just happened to be on the losing side of a war.